So a lot of people have heard the terms out of sight, out of mind. And this was the same concept for me when it came to squatting in the American culture. I didn't realize how much of a squatting epidemic there was, or a lack of squatting epidemic there was, until I spent time in China. I lived at the Olympic Training Center for 2 months, and at the time had just sprained my ankle before going there to work with some athletes. While I was there, I realized that they don't have the same toilets that we have here. And in fact, their toilets require that you come down to this level and have full function of your body just to be able to use number 2. So because I had a sprained ankle, I was trying to get it done in some kind of funky position like this. It was a mess, to say the least. And it wasn't until I checked the last place that I thought I would need to check to find an American-style toilet, and it was in the handicap stall. And this was when I started asking the question to myself, why is it that in my homeland, the toilets that I've been raised on, the toilets I see everywhere, are only found in the handicap stall in this country with over 1 billion people in it? And when I started looking around the city of Beijing, I also noticed that at the bus stops, everyone's chilling in this position. People waiting outside of movie theaters, just chilling in this position, comfortable, as long as they need to, it seemed. And I came home, and after a lot of education on the overhead squat assessment and different reasons why squatting is important, I recognized that no one in our culture, relatively speaking, is required day in and day out to squat below 90 degrees unless they're maybe in a gym, maybe if they're in a martial art, or if they're under the age of 5. Because once they're 5 years old, now they're squatting into a desk and not having to go lower than that. So we've started adding in the overhead squat assessment to the Source Chiropractic full functional comprehensive exam because it's an amazing tool to globally assess the function of the brain's ability to connect with the body, all the joints of the body, and then to coordinate movement, loading gravity with lots of range of motion coming up and down. Now, I want to give you 2 cues to where you can almost assess yourself. Standing up about hip width apart. If you have your feet not parallel on the outsides of your feet, which would be a little more appropriate for a hinge, but parallel on the insides of your feet, I want you to lift your toes off the ground and recognize that you're going to have the whole ball of your foot pressed across the front. And there's 2 points I want you to focus on, the inside and the outside. If you put pressure on the inside of the foot, just at the ball of the foot, you'll notice the knees start to collapse in. If you put pressure on the outside of the foot, you'll notice that your knees are actually starting to move out. The next piece is, we've talked about the hip hinge in the past, and we've talked about decompression breathing. I want you to remember those principles as we carry into the squat as well. What we don't want to see is, as you hinge back, your back extends way too far, or you hardly hinge back and your back flexes like this. The next piece is, we don't want to see your knees collapse in like this, and we don't want to see your knees completely bow out like this. So the 2 cues I have for you are going to be equal pressure into the heels, the outside, and the inside of the ball of the foot. That tripod pressure equally on the whole foot. That will naturally organize your knees and hips into a position of equal balance forward and back and side to side. Then do your decompression breath, and as you descend, maintain that pressure. If you have your hang loose sign like this, as you go down, you don't want this to increase and you don't want that to decrease. That maintains that same space from the hips to the ribs the whole time. So now as you go down, pressure on the tripods equally, decompression breath, descend with your hips back and your knees forward 1 inch. Hold that position. And now feel, do I have tension in my back, in my knees, my ankles, in my neck, somewhere in my body? Do I have now more pressure on the inside or outside of my foot? Do I feel like I'm extending too far? Then descend, once you've organized that a little better, using those cues, decompression, equal pressure in the tripods, descend another inch, and then ask, do I have equal pressure in the tripods, in my hips? Decompressing my spine, have I hinged or bent? And then go another inch. And see if you can continue to go down and down and down. You can have your hands float out in front of you as a counterbalance. Do you have the ability to get down to 90 degrees with a stable spine and then come back up through the heels? To show you from the sides, decompression breath, equal pressure in the feet, Insides of the feet are lined up with each other, parallel. Once you decompress, your knees and your hips are going to start to go in opposite directions like a scissor lift would lift or drop a cage. Decompressing, keeping that neutral spine. Pressure is equal on the outside and inside ball of the foot as well as the heel. I come down an inch, I check in, decompression breath, I drop a little lower, decompression breath, pressure in the heels, ball of the foot on both sides, drop down to 90 degrees, and then push through the heels and stand back up. Asking yourself at each of those levels of descent, do I have tension anywhere in my body, or do I feel like I have a global distribution of the force of gravity? This is a huge indicator for your function and the ability to get the most out of life. Buckminster Fuller is quoted saying that we are all born geniuses, but the process of life de-geniuses us. And if you look at toddlers, infants, people that are just learning how to move, one of the first things they can do once they're up on 2 feet is an amazingly immaculate squat. The body is naturally built to move in that way. So what we've talked about today is a basic way of you assessing, has the process of life de-geniused you? Have you lost the ability to have this fundamental movement pattern of squatting? Some people can still have it, they've done it, they've maintained it, and that's amazing. A lot of people don't have that ability anymore. So if you've noticed that, pay attention to some of the videos that we'll have coming up. We're going to show you some ways of improving your squat that you can be doing very easily and just regularly to increase your function, increase your range of motion, and increase the quality of your life.